Hey all, I'm Sky Murphy and I'm here to talk about this week's newsletter. So in the first part of it I mentioned falling on my face, and falling on my face relates totally to my future self. There's been times in my life where I totally overloaded my future self with decision making, where I'm like, well, I don't know how to make that decision right now, I'll just leave that up to my future self. And in most cases that kind of thinking hasn't worked out for me. A really good example is one time I decided that on a certain trip, in a certain place, on a certain day, I would make this huge decision. And so what happened? I made a really bad decision because I wasn't any more informed in that future place, in that future day, at that future time. There wasn't anything magical about it. I was the same person trying to make the same decision that I didn't have enough information about. And I ended up moving to Kentucky for like 3 days, which is a whole epic story. So the deal with the future self is that we tend to overload the future self with things that are heroic seeming to our normal present day self. We're like, well, I can't do that, but sure as hell my future self can. And when you start thinking that your future self can do things that you can't do, that's where, that's where the future starts to become a problem. That's where the future starts to weigh you down, maybe get a little oppressive, because you're expecting things out of that future self that future self doesn't know how to do. Future selves aren't magical. They're ordinary human people just like you. Present self is a lot more about what's going on here and now, of course. But the key point that I want about present day self is that emotions exist here. The future, we can be expecting events, or that we could look back and remember events. But the emotions that we're having are in this here and now. They're not future emotions or past emotions. The other big thing to mention in this is moving all the way through an emotion. Now, I don't mean this in a, well, if you're feeling anger, then you should go have a raging, screaming match with someone. No, that's not what I'm talking about. But I am saying that if you do have anger, that you do need to take time by yourself to let yourself get all the way through it. And it doesn't have to, anger isn't necessarily associated with one event. Anger is just anger. And what I usually recommend to people is using a song or working out or some sort of physically beating up a pillow, something to get all the way through anger to find out what's on the other side. A lot of times what people do is they start to ramp up into anger and they go, oh my God, it's not cool to be in anger, and then they come back out of it, which is probably appropriate in the situation, but they never go all the way through. They never go back and go all the way through to find out what's on the other side of anger. So then people end up with these stacked up emotions and they don't know why they feel so tense and so bound up. So that's present self. Past self, the beauty of past self is we can find evidence for anything in past self. Past self can show us, how we're consistently wrong. It can show us how we're consistently careful, how we're consistently good, how we're consistently surprising. Past self has all this evidence, and it's up to us to go back there and mine it so that we can propel ourselves forward. So in the affirmations, I suggest finding something that you like about your past, because there is always something good. If you look into a past situation, you can say, well, this part was good, or at least I did do this. It's finding the little nuggets. It's not necessarily you'll always have big nuggets, but there's these little nuggets of evidence that can help you push you forward. So that's what I have this week on this newsletter. Thank you so much for reading and watching, and I'll see you again soon. Thanks, and this has been Sky Murphy.